really excited today to be in the podcast room, the next episode of the Alliance podcast. And we have with us Dave Wolf, who is the creator and host of Will and Awareness Workshop. And Dave, what is the Will and Awareness Workshop?
It basically what it says, just making more aware of the will and some of the small parts that most folks don't understand. But it's basically what it is we get subjects that typically a person won't seek out. We get them in front of folks. We bring it to them.
Basically talking about some of those things that they need to know before they die, right?
Yeah, exactly. That's good.
And so, and that's what your workshop uncovers is really talking about those things that people don't want to talk about, that they don't want to think about, and putting it out there and making sure that they know that they need to do these things before they can't do these things.
Yep, just getting in front of them and making sure, because a lot of folks, the question we ask is, when do you seek these out? And it's usually when they need them. Well, why don't we get it? Why don't we educate? Why don't we get in front of you before you need them, long before? And that's what our hope is. And it's worked out pretty well.
Absolutely. And you've been doing this for roughly 30 years now?
30 years. Yep.
Wow.
Long time.
And doing it all over the country, going around, traveling, and doing the workshops?
Yep, all over the country. It's been been fun, but it's a lot. It's a lot to get to those folks. And it's amazing that 30 years later, they're still in the same thoughts, same frame of mind.
Still more than 50% of people don't have a will, right?
Exactly. Yep.
And a pandemic didn't even change that,
didn't
right?
Change it.
Didn't change that one bit.
I think it did start making them more aware. They're starting to really take
of the need, because a lot of people ended up not only passing away, but in situations where they were in an ICU, in a coma, and they needed some of these directives, healthcare directives and powers of attorney to be able to make decisions. Their family needed those to make decisions. So I think I agree. It's made it more aware, but I bet if you looked at percentages of people that had these things before and after, it's probably pretty close.
Oh, yeah, because they feel overwhelmed, I think. So that's why the Will Awareness Workshop, we said, well, if you're going to do that, we're going to come to you. We want to get it. We're not going to wait for you. If you ask an estate planning attorney, how do you, and if they were here, if a estate planning attorney was standing, I'd say, how do you get your clients? And they'll say, referral, word of mouth.
People coming to them.
Coming to them. Yep. And
nobody wants to think about this stuff, right?
Kidding.
Nobody wants to do it, so they're not going to come to them, or they really don't, unless they have a life event that comes up and really makes them think about these things. What you're doing is not only bringing awareness, educating, but also helping them facilitate actually getting the stuff done that they need to get done.
Yeah,
so
exactly, it's getting them access to it without having to shop all over town. In essence, you go to buy a car, but you might go to 20 different car lots. Well, here, what happens is they'll go to 20. If they go to 20 different, they may not do a thing. That's why it's not being done. We make sure they get exactly what they need. The exact person knows somebody, and facilitate so they don't have to wonder. We put it right there for them.
Yeah, the only thing worse than shopping attorneys and meeting with 10 different attorneys is maybe shopping insurance agents and meeting with 10 different insurance agents, right?
Yeah, that's true.
But no, they want to be educated. They want to know what they need to do, and they want somebody to help them get it done.
Help them get it done.
Right?
Exactly.
And check that off the box and move on, not think about it for a few years at least.
Exactly.
David, so in this Will Awareness Workshop, what exactly do you go over in the Will Awareness Workshop?
We cover what is a will. We cover, because we want to educate folks. So we want to know what a will is. How does it work? What are powers of attorney? What is the trust? What's the difference between a will and trust? We talk about the need for nursing home care or nursing home protection, and what are the rules when it comes to that? What are the rules when it comes to your retirement accounts and the beneficiaries and things of that nature? So we kind of cover a broad spectrum, but we want to educate on each one of those subjects. That way they feel like they've got something out of it.
Absolutely.
One of the things in my workshop we talk about is cultural programming. What happens is, if mom and dad did it a certain way, if television does a certain way, we do the same things, and it gets overlooked. Definitely. That's why some of the movie stars, television stars, singers, they're like us. They do exactly what everybody else does.
Well, I think everybody thinks they're not going to die, right?
They're not going to die. Yeah.
Or if they are, they're going to have plenty of time to think about it. But
that's it. Plenty of time.
That's not the thing. That's not what happens. Some people, it just happens, right?
Yep.
You don't always have the time to prepare. So what we need to do is prepare for that time and do some of the things. So what are the things that the average American, or that everybody, especially if you have dependents that are in assets and things of that nature, what are the things that people need to do before they pass away?
And the list could be long, but it doesn't need to be. It needs to be straightforward a little bit. They need to do initial things. I mean, it said, me not being an attorney, I always tell the folks, I'm not an attorney. I cannot give you legal advice or tell you what you need to do. But what I can tell you is everyone says you need a will and you need powers of attorney, meaning instructions for somebody to help you when you can't help yourself. Mm-hmm. And that's initial. Now, those can vary depending on your state, things that you have, your motives, how you want to leave your assets, but don't stop. What happens is most people they're going to get to it. Mm-hmm. It's too much to think about. No, you can initially get your things down and be protected 80, 90% of it. Then think about the advanced stuff that you want. But you need to start. And if you just had to sit down and take a piece of paper and write it on a piece of paper, that's a beginning.
So why do you think that over 50% of Americans don't have that basic will? What stops them? Why don't they start?
There's multiple things, multiple reasons, I guess. I think the beginning is, as you said a moment ago, they just don't. It's not immediate in their mind, and it's kind of like when you want to talk to somebody about a funeral, they don't want to talk about it. Mm-hmm. Like my wife is highly educated, great lady. If I call her up and say, let's talk about the funeral, if something would happen to us, she won't talk about it. Just won't do it because it's putting something in front of yourself that people just don't want to discuss, and it seems so big. It's like there's got to be so much to this. That's what they tell us. They say, I just don't know I even have a problem. So they'll say, well, grandpa or grandma died, or mom and dad passed away, or they did it this way, and there was no problem. And they don't realize there could potentially be these issues, so it seems larger than it is, and they put it off. That's why they just procrastinate. So
in your will awareness workshop that you're doing, and really going out and doing a really good service for the country and helping people understand what all these pitfalls are, and you do it. I love it because you do it through stories, and that's a great way for individuals to relate, because maybe they're exactly that story that you're talking about, or they know somebody, or it helps them to fully understand the need for this planning, right?
Yes.
And so I love the stories and doing that. So why don't you kind of talk about a couple of those and how you use those in your seminar to help people understand the things they know before they pass away.
When I start off, I tell folks I'm going to tell a story. I always tell them, I said, but I'm going to tell a lot of stories throughout this workshop to relate. But I have tons of them, but there's two that I focus on a lot. And one of them is my father-in-law. My father-in-law passed away at 52. Mm-hmm. When I met my wife.
So a young guy.
Yeah, very young. And he had 5 kids. Mm-hmm. Now, I get emotional. It's tough. When I start thinking about it, I met my wife when I was 19, and we went for a walk. And during it, I said, I saw your mom and I saw your brothers and sisters. I said, I hate to ask, I didn't see your dad. And, divorce rates are so high and things. She got real quiet and said, my dad died last year when she was 18.
Wow.
So she had one sister who had already graduated college, older brother who was in college. She was in college. Her sister was just going to college, and a brother in high school. And I was flattened. It was almost unfathomable to me, because my dad and my mom, they're such a central part of my life. Well, I always tell the story, start off that way to let them understand it's just a normal family. Well, my mother-in-law was able to pay for 3 weddings. There's 3 daughters.
Wow.
She hasn't worked. She's been able to stay at home, babysit my kids. I've got a brother, all my in-laws' children. I got a brother-in-law that's triplets, and I always laugh and go, boy, I think I would,
I know, right?
Oh, yeah, they're great kids, but oh, my gosh, if triplets at one time.
Got to start playing zone defense with triplets, right? Yeah. You can't do man-to-man.
But she was able to do all of that because of what an estate planner and insurance person did for my father-in-law.
Oh, wow.
And I said, guys, he owned his own practice in St. Louis, in a big CPA practice. He's very conservative. You understand CPAs are so conservative. Mm-hmm. You wouldn't not know it. I never met him, but everybody bragged about him, talked about how good he was. But the family's just very conservative. And I said, I'm picturing some young insurance rep sitting with him, and he's telling him he knows what he's doing. Mm-hmm. If he would have pushed him away, my mother-in-law would have had to get a job, would have had to really work hard, would have had to struggle, would have had to go through all that. How would she put all the kids through college? How would she be able to babysit and not have to work? How would she be able to go to Ireland 3, 4, 5 times, go on vacations, live a normal life because of what he did?
And it's hard enough without that, right?
Without that.
It's hard enough without that. With all those problems that come along with not planning and not being prepared, not having the necessary documents in place, and all the things, the passwords, the accounts, man. If you don't have all that stuff in place and there, it makes the grieving process and that whole aftermath so much worse. And the story becomes completely different. It would have been a completely different story if he wouldn't have done all those things.
But I tell that story because I like telling true stories. I wouldn't fabricate a story, but I wanted the folks to know that they're the same. He was 52. Mm-hmm. He just went for a physical, and back in that would be 82. 81 or 82, they used to put you in the hospital for a few days and do a full physical. Mm-hmm. So he just had it done. My wife said like a week before, 2 weeks before.
Wow.
There was no way to know. And in his mind, it was never going to happen. But what spurred him on is he lost his father at a young age. And he had to take care of his mother, and he thought, I can't have that happen. I know that. I know that's what he...
Especially with 5 kids, right?
With 5 kids.
And that's one of the things that I don't understand with people that have kids, that have families, of the extra one, not just the whole estate plan, but having life insurance to go along with to help protect their family in the event that something happens and they can't be there to bring in the income that they're bringing in, especially if those kids are minors and they can't go out and take care of them, so they can't go get a job by themselves. Yep. I have a 4-year-old and an 8-year-old. I mean,
could you imagine?
Can't put them to work, right?
And then family members and everybody would have to step up per se. And you think, and that's always on my mind. It's always been, or even long before that was on my mind. But that's one story I tell. The other story is myself getting sick. I always start off saying, I'm going to tell you a story. And I had my son was just born. He's 21, so it would have been 21 years ago. And I got up on a Saturday afternoon, and I told my wife, I said, I don't feel well. And she said, well, do you mind if I'm going to go get groceries real quick? She goes, we need to get a bunch of stuff. And I have 2 older daughters that are little. They were only, it's terrible. I can't remember the discrepancy, like 8, 5, and then David was born. And I said, sure, I'll just lay on the couch, and David's in a pumpkin seat. And I said, I'll watch them. They're playing. The girls are playing like crazy. They just played nonstop, and I'll give them a snack or something. I felt horrible. When she came back an hour and a half later, she stepped in the room, and I went to help her put the groceries away. And she goes, oh, my gosh, David, you're yellow. She goes, and I did. I went to the mirror and looked, and I was yellow. Wow. And my eyes looked like an old cue ball. Like those where you ever played an old, this yellow, nasty looking. Yeah. And I said, oh, what do you think's going on? And she goes, I don't know. So I called the hospital in St. Louis that we go to, and they said, well, it's a 5-hour wait in the emergency room. You're going to have a wait. And she said, why don't we go to the small town hospital? And I said, I'll go there and get it checked. And I said, so I said, you stay here. We got 3 kids. There's no reason to worry about it. I'll go there and see. It's probably an infection or something. So I drove to the hospital. When I came in, I could see the looks on their face when I came in the emergency room, and they hurried me up. They got me took blood, x-rays, CAT scan, you name it. And within an hour, they came over, and the guy holds my hand and says, do you have family close by? Now, I get emotional because I was like, why? He said, your liver's shutting down. Wow. And I was like, I couldn't breathe. I'm 38 years old. That doesn't happen. That's why I always tell people, this don't happen, right? Mm-hmm. I've all the silly things I've done in my life, and all of a sudden I'm laying on this gurney in a hospital room. I called my wife, said, sweetie, you got to get here. Why? And I said, they say it's bad. And she's like bawling, getting there trying to figure out what's going on. And they didn't understand what was happening, all the tests and everything. And so it planed off after a couple hours. And they said, well, your liver's enzymes aren't going as fast, and your temperature's planing off. And they said, we need to watch it. What's wrong? We don't know. We got more tests to do. So I told her to go home. I said, look, they're going to put me in a room, and I'm going to sleep. I'm tired. I was so tired. And I always tell people that. That's the first time I realized that's what happens when I just want to close my eyes. I didn't care what happened. I just want to go to sleep. And she said, okay, so they were wheeling me down the hallway, and I'll have to watch my emotions here because it's almost like a fresh wound, still this day. And she turned and kissed me, and then she'd walk down, turned and looked at me, and I smiled and winked, and then they were walking me into the room, and I thought, I'll never see her again. This is the day. I thought, Wolf, oh my gosh. And I kept apologizing the whole evening to her. I kept saying, I'm sorry, sweetie. She kept saying, why do you keep saying sorry? Stop that. I said, because I got a brand new baby boy and 2 little girls, and I'm leaving you. And I don't know if I have it all right. She goes, we're taking care of it. I wasn't worried about dying. And I think as a man, you've got children. And some of the folks that we all know have children. You think, I'm not even worried about dying now. All I can think about is what you just said.
The aftermath.
What are they going to do?
Yeah.
Not just without the pain, like you said, and if I've left them in total disarray. And so I tell the crowd this story, and you can see their face just like it, because it is. Anybody, man, I can't talk for women because I'm not a woman. I'm a man. I can only think about how a man thinks, and I stared at the ceiling all night, laying there thinking, waiting for, will you know it will happen? And then I'm thinking, oh my gosh, I'm visualizing my wife and my children. And I grew up very poor, and I thought they're going to grow up like I did. Wow. And I never intended that. And
so you got better.
Got better, yes. I told the crowd, I said, guess what? I made it. But the end of the story was, yes, I did. What it was is I had a virus called, it's called the parvovirus. Little kids get the 5th disease. It's the 5th childhood disease. I think that's why they call it that. It's just usually, you wouldn't even known it back in the older days, back in 40s, 50s, 60s. Little kids go out, play outside all day, come in, got red cheeks and a mild fever. Oh, hell, they shouldn't have been outside. They shouldn't have had, I didn't mean to say it.
Yeah, you're right.
I'm just being candid, but you're like, oh, it's just a little fever. But it's called 5th disease. And as an adult, it's like getting chicken pox. So it's like 1 in 2 to 4 million get it and respond like I did.
Wow.
So by luck, there was 2 doctors that were there that came in and looked at me. And I tell the story more. I said, the doctor came in. My wife was there all with me every minute. And then she left, said, I got to go take a shower and see the kids. I'll be back in an hour or 2. But she left. It wasn't a half hour later. The female doctor walks in, and she pats me on the leg, sits down, and says, how you feeling? I said, what's wrong? She goes, we think it's cancer. And I was by myself, no one in the room, and she was comforting me, and I just sat there thinking, and I remember going, oh, my gosh, no. And so she said, I'm going to leave you alone. And then my wife came back an hour or 2, and she walked in, and she could see my face. I could tell it. She saw it. She's like, what? Let's sit down. They're going to do a biopsy in an hour or so, but they ruled everything out. They think it's cancer. And I said, so I start going through the list that we're talking about. Mm-hmm. Here's what has to have happened. David, don't worry. No, we have to get these things in place now because it could tumble quickly. And by luck, the 2 doctors that were from Johns Hopkins came through. I think it was Johns Hopkins. They came through and they said, hey, we're liver specialists. They wanted us to come and say hi to you. And he started asking questions, and he said, I'll bet that's what you have. It's rare. And that's what I had. So,
wow.
So I survived.
They were able to treat it.
But changed everything. Changed how I approached this business. It made me more passionate. It made me more direct. Because just as you were talking earlier, there's a lot of folks that we don't ever dream that'll happen. Yep. In a heartbeat.
So we've talked a lot about death so far, right? And the need for a will and being scared to death and that kind of thing. But there's also some other things that you need to have in place, even before you pass away, even before you get in a situation where you're sick and you need those things. We could be driving down the road, right, and get in a bad car accident, have a bad head injury and be in a coma, right? Yeah,
you've got to have advanced directives and powers of attorney. They're simple.
So let's talk some about those. What are those powers of attorney, the advanced directives, those things what are those kind of things that we need to have in place?
Well, powers of attorney, and a lot of times folks misunderstand it a little bit. It's like I always try to put it in a simple format. Like if I was out of town and I was going to buy a house and I had to buy it that day, closing, and I couldn't be there, and I gave you a power of attorney. I have a lawyer draw up a power of attorney, meaning you can act on my behalf. Mm-hmm. Signed it just as I would. But I'm not going to give you a power of attorney. So once the signing's done, I'm not going to allow you to go down to the bank and sign. I'm going to say when it's done, it's a temporary power of attorney. Well, that's the same with healthcare and finances. And a lot of folks believe, or don't understand. that they don't need one. And you just said it. You're going down the road and get in a car accident. What happens? What happens if I would have that incident I was telling you about? And that's why I tell the stories to see what if I would have been on. I would have got to the hospital and collapsed.
Right.
And my wife shows up, and they say, "What's wrong?" And she says, and they say, "Are you the power of attorney? Power of attorney? Do you have power of attorney, Margaret?" And she would say, "No. Well, we can't. You're going to have to."
It limits them what they can do and say and all that kind of stuff.
Yes.
So
and imagine children and all those things. So that's that. The power of attorney is just giving somebody to act on your behalf, and for a husband and wife, or if you're single, and you have to somehow give somebody the ability to help you that way. And they're simple. They're easy to do. I would love to pass them out in the crowd when I'm talking in our workshops and tell people, start filling them out at the end. The attorney witness them and notarize, and everyone would have powers of attorney. There's two major types. There's general, which covers everything except healthcare, health. And then there's healthcare power of attorney, which has advanced directives. Some states have different ways they word it. And each state has their own versions of it per se. Some states may be identical, but most still have a little bit of different language in it. So it's understanding them, but knowing they're so simple. And if you don't have them, how would somebody help take care of you when it's too late?
Right.
Yeah. And
you can't sign that when you're in a coma, right?
No.
It doesn't matter how long you're going to live. If you can't
sign it. You can't. You have to go to court. And then a good friend of mine's wife passed away of leukemia. Another one of the stories where she was never going to get it. On Good Friday, he told me. 6 months later, she passed away.
Wow.
During that process, I said, you have to get these documents done now. And I talked to him and her and said, just get them done. He didn't have anything. So he went and he did it. He got with our attorneys, and he sat down and they got the powers of attorney done. And when I was in the hospital with him, when they turned off the life support, what it did for him and his family was his wife said, this is what I want.
Right.
You don't have to live with a grief of, did I do
the right thing?
Did I do the right thing?
No, I did the right thing because I know in writing this is what they asked for.
This is what
this
they
is
asked.
Their wishes.
Yep.
This is what they wanted. That makes it so much easier in that process, right?
And it's worth it for that alone to me to have to say, and I've had these conversations. We were talking about things to do before you die. And I know it progresses because your children are young. You can't have a conversation with your children until they're of age to accept it. And you don't want to scare. I don't want to scare them. I don't want to. So, but once they're my children of an age now, I have conversations about distinct things to let them off the hook. Guys, don't feel guilty. I have that done. Don't think I have to do that. No, I've already done my power of attorney and told you exactly what I want done. I don't want you thinking, do we take him off of life support or don't we? Or they might rush to take me off. Just
and these kind of things, they change and they progress through your life too. So like my documents today are going to be a lot different than my documents, say, 20 years from now when my kids are grown and no longer dependent upon me, right?
Yep,
so
exactly.
My biggest worry in a lot of my planning today is my kids, is what happens if something happens to me, but also what happens if something happens to me and my wife. At the same time, which could happen. I have to think about that stuff too. We fly all over the place together. That plane could go down, and if it does, I don't want my kids being orphans and not having a plan in place for family and for friends, the guardians that we want. One, we got to pick them. We got to have those conversations with them, right, and make sure that person says, "Yeah, I'll do it." But then also just everything in place there to guide them and direct them if that horrible thing were to happen.
Yeah, because if it were to happen, that's so many times sitting with attorneys and watching them handle clients. It's like, if you both were to die today, who takes the kids? And there'll be statements like, well, my mom. And I've watched the husband turn and go, well, no, my mom and dad. And then, no, our brothers. My brothers love me. We're best friends. My brothers would want to be involved. I had to have a conversation with them why I chose to do what it is, not against them. It was based on, I made decisions based on financial ability and things, because I think if you left, if you passed away and you left your family, your children to someone who maybe, let's say it's your mother and she's 78,
maybe not be the best idea.
Might not be the best idea.
Right.
And it doesn't mean it's wrong or right, but it means that.
But that person can be there and help, right? You can assign that person to help guide and oversee.
Yep.
Be co-trustee or something
Exactly.
along those lines if you set up a trust. So there's things to do for those individuals that you know are going to love and care for them, but maybe they can't love and care for them, right?
Yeah.
So they love them, but maybe they can't do some of those things that they need
or
to do.
be eliminated. There's so many folks that, and I'm going to use this, and I use it in a workshop because I always ask folks when I'm doing planning. I'll say, "Do you have children?" And they'll say, "Yeah, I have 2." Are they married? Yeah. Then you have 4. You have 4 decision makers.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, so let's say, and I hate to say daughter-in-law or son-in-law do not like me, and I pass away, if I don't have these things set, simple things, it's possible that there could be a disagreement, like who's going to take the child, who's going to do this. So it's almost like you just take a pen, write it down, what would you want? And then you have to have the right person to put it in place. So, and it's simple, but it doesn't seem simple, but it is when it comes to somebody, an attorney who knows their business and understands how to say, no, this is exactly what we need to do.
Taking this a step further, now we know that we need some planning. Where do we go get that planning? You shouldn't go get an attorney in Texas to write your will in Georgia. And let's talk about like kind of picking that attorney, who you should
Sure.
That kind of thing.
There's so much available now, especially now that COVID came along, that because you can. There are some great services. It's either getting an attorney local, and the discrepancy in them it doesn't seem to be, but it can be vast, meaning from pricing to what they believe in. And that sounds wrong, but you want an estate planning attorney. A lot of times folks get an attorney. And
you should get a divorce attorney or a business attorney to do your estate. They can do it.
Yeah.
But when I'm doing this, and when I went through this whole process, and I've now done it twice, I searched and found, like you said, an estate planning attorney that specializes in estate planning, wills, trusts, powers of attorney.
Exactly, because if you get it, you made a statement earlier about the plan. Well, if you're living in Georgia but you intend to retire in Florida, I just thought of that. You go, yeah, you have to. The state rules are different. Now, it doesn't mean you have to scrap your old plan, but it shows you have to keep updated. You have to keep it. So,
so if you do move,
you should
pull all those documents out and look at them again.
Look at them. Get with an attorney from Florida.
Talk to an attorney in that state. Absolutely.
Yeah, and then they can review them and allow you to know what the discrepancies or changes would be or differences. But you should be looking at those documents anyway, every 5 years minimum.
At least, yeah.
At least,
yeah. And if anything ever major happens in your life, you have another kid, you divorce, a new marriage, or buying a business, all those kind of things, you should take the opportunity to step back and look at that planning again to make sure what you put in place at that point in time is still good today. And if there's changes that need to be made, they're easy changes to make.
Yeah. Yeah. If you let it go way too long, and that's why part of the services that we offer is an annual review. Because people say, well, let's say you had 100 customers that were clients. Well, 90 of them may have nothing to be done.
Right.
But would you rather wait 5 years when it's massive? Or why don't we go each year and make sure, even if I meet you for a half hour and say, no, everything's good.
Or a phone call, right?
Or a phone call.
Nothing's changed.
Hey,
Everything's still good.
Good.
It's all good.
Yeah. That keeps it so you don't wait so long. You made a good statement.
I've seen it a lot of times. One of these things that you should know before you die is who your beneficiaries are on your policies and your 401ks and things like that do have beneficiaries designations. I've been in situations where a death benefit on a life insurance policy is being paid to an ex-spouse.
Oh yeah,
and that it's there. There's nothing that I can do with it. There's nothing the insurance company can do with it. There's nothing the new wife or new husband can do with that directive there in that policy. It is paying to that individual. So it's very important if things change in your life to review those plans, review the beneficiaries and your like I said, your life insurance, your 401k, your qualified plans that you have set up and things of that, IRAs, and making sure that they're still what they should be.
Oh yeah, definitely. And when I always tell the stories, I go through my mind when you're saying it. My buddy Toby lives in my neighborhood, and we've known each other for 18 years. He got divorced, and he came to me and said, "Hey, you handle this stuff. What's my life insurance policy good?" And I said, well, he wanted to take his, so we called his company. And I said, well, let's call a company and let's get you to get a beneficiary change because your ex-wife. I said, I don't want her to get it. And I'm like, well, you got to get that changed. And I said, well, who are those contingent beneficiaries? Are those your family members? And he looked at him and said, I don't know who those people are.
Well,
so somehow by accident, they transferred the wrong contingent beneficiary somehow onto the form. And so I always tell people that it was one of the first times I've ever seen that, probably the only time. And he went, oh my gosh. So we had to call and change the contingent beneficiaries and stuff. And it's as simple as that, taking a peek at it.
Yeah, and making sure they're, I have clients a lot that say that they want to make their minor child the beneficiary.
Yeah.
Like, don't do that. Not without, especially not without some of the stuff that we've been talking about in place. But that's probably one of the last things that you should do.
Yeah.
So, but this has been very informative, and really appreciate the time and what you're doing with your will awareness workshops, because you're going out there and serving middle income America, helping people understand the things that they need to have in place, and helping them do it. Because it's one thing to educate, it's one thing to put things out there, but it's the other thing to facilitate them being able to put these things in place that they need to do. And you're doing a great job with that. So we thank you.
We're trying hard.
Yeah.
Serving. You have to serve, I think.
A servant mindset always works, in my opinion.
Yeah.
I'm a firm believer, if you help enough people get what they want and what they need, you'll get what you want.
Exactly. Good. That's good.
So if somebody wanted to find out more about your will awareness workshop, where would they go?
They can go to willawareness.com and check us out.
Excellent. So all the information there, some videos, ways that they can get into your workshop.
Exactly.
And you can also find out more information on alliancegrouplife.com on estate planning and things that you need to know before you pass away. So thanks, Dave, for your time. Thanks for everything that you do, and really appreciate you being here with us today.
Thank you for having me.
Excellent.